It's good to have at least one Christmas that's kind of out of the norm, where it's pared down and stripped down, because how else are you going to get an opportunity to really kind of evaluate the intangibles, that are behind Christmas?
Hello and welcome to This Alabama Life, a look at some of the great stories of people from or having something to do with the state of Alabama. And we always are looking for entertaining, uplifting, inspiring stories on this particular podcast. My name is Don Keith. I'm not especially uplifting or inspiring. I hope I'm entertaining. I know I've got a lot of white hair, but that's about it. This Alabama Life, my co-conspirator, Andrea Tice. Andrea, good to see you.
Hey, it's good to be here.
We're going to talk about Christmas today. We're going to talk about some things that happened in our own lives around Christmas, and I think Andrea has a far more interesting background than I do. My one Christmas story, I mentioned white hair. I used to work for a company whose home office was at the Galleria Towers here in Birmingham, and
Right.
I got on the elevator one day, and a mother and her little about 4 or 5 year old son got on the elevator with me. And we're zooming up, and he looks up at me, and the brightest look comes on his face, and he says, "Santa Claus!" So I promptly went home and shaved most of my beard and lost 50 pounds, which I've since regained. But, out of the mouths of babes, right?
Was it a real full beard?
Yeah, I had a lot
Okay.
more beard than I do now, and a lot of white beards, but there you go. I guess I should have been flattered rather than...
That's right. You made someone kid's day, right?
Exactly. We all think of Christmas as being especially child-oriented, but not necessarily. Tell us a little bit about... Now, you didn't grow up in Alabama. You ain't from here, right?
I ain't from here, no. But I'm a happy transplant. Don't get me wrong. We came here in 2013. But yeah, I had my childhood and my teen years was spent moving quite a bit, with my parents being both serving as missionaries and in the pastorate. And so, I think on average it was about every 2 to 2.5 years that we would end up moving. So there was a time there where we were out of the country. There was a couple of times. It wasn't for a long amount of time, but it was enough to, get the experience. It wasn't just a vacation, So the one Christmas that I wanted to talk about first of all is because it came to me because I was walking through the aisles of Hobby Lobby, perusing in advance the Christmas. I'm not the best Christmas shopper, but I do know to go to Hobby Lobby early because that's where all the deals are. So I was going through Hobby Lobby, and I turned the corner, and there was this this shelf with these trees, these ceramic trees, and I'm going to show you this picture, okay? And I'm going to throw it up here on the camera. But it's a ceramic tree with these little bulbs, and they light up if you put them, plug it in and everything. I personally wouldn't choose that out of all the other options, but it, you know how certain things bring back your memories, smells,
Mm-hmm.
certain music takes you right back, certain visuals, that kind of a thing. Well, this was an instance where it just came right back to me. I just remembered being in the country of Belize, and my parents were there because they had gone down to fill in for a pastor to go on furlough for roughly a year. And I was 15 at the time. I had a 17-year-old brother and a 13-year-old brother. And we went down there, and a long story short on that, things got confused, and the person that they were supposed to replace actually wasn't there, and it didn't work out. We were going to be in the city. So somehow, word of mouth gets around, and they find out there's this American guy coming down to replace a guy. Well, we have another pastor who needs a furlough. And lo and behold, we are out 30 miles into the boonies of Belize. One, a tiny lane road that they call a highway, and, just roughing it. No electricity, out in the dense jungle of like a Costa Rica, Nicaragua type jungle. That's where Belize is. So anyways, we ended up living in someone's trailer, and it was like 25 feet. and we actually had a little pop-up trailer to add on to it so that we had enough beds. But we ended up living in there for 9 months. I don't know if anybody's ever done some extended camping, but that's extended camping when you're living with teenagers in a 25-foot camper. So anyways, yeah, there was that was an interesting time. There was this thing we called the dinner time shuffle, where you're getting into the 3 square feet of actual foot space. You're getting in there 5 people to get food and sit at the table, and it was just this interesting little dance that you had to do. That's just to give you an idea of how small it was. And of course, Christmas comes rolling around, and we're like, what are we gonna do? It was the last thing on our minds, quite honestly. We were so tight. But my mom happened to find this ceramic tree in a shed, and she pulled it out, and we plugged it in on the back ledge of those, couches turned into beds. You know how that all works. So we put it on there. That was our Christmas tree. And that was it. And that was really enough. We didn't want anything more to take the room from us. And then she found these packets of do-it-yourself ornaments. Okay? And I even have a picture of them. Do-it-yourself ornaments, they're really, really elaborate. I mean, like extremely elaborate. Here's just a picture. I'll throw it up. Where you have to use these beads, and you have to do sequins and thread them and add all these different layers and then stick them into the styrofoam. So that's what we did. We filled our time with that, and then we hung them along the window where the tree was. And that was the extent of our Christmas. It was pretty pared down. And that when I saw that ceramic tree, boy, I just went right back to that. And then I was thinking about it. It's good to have at least one Christmas that's kind of out of the norm, where it's pared down and stripped down, because how else are you going to get an opportunity to really kind of evaluate the intangibles, that are behind Christmas? The spirit behind the Christmas is the most important thing. Are you, operating in love, joy, peace that Christ has brought to this earth? Or is it all about the peripherals, the externals? And when you don't really maybe engage in that process, if you get swept up into the commercialism.
Well, you're certainly not going to go to the mall, right?
Right. Yeah, you get we tend to get so caught up in the activity, whatever it is, even if it's church related, and it it appears to be a good thing. But when you have a stripped down trailer made Christmas, you kind of have to evaluate some things. So that was an interesting Christmas that I recommend to everybody, even though at the time it was very odd.
I would think the climate too. You didn't let it snow, let it snow, let it snow for sure. It just doesn't feel like Christmas if it's 80 degrees every day.
No, it was definitely humid and hot on that day, from what I can remember. But
Christmas in Belize. Well, Christmas is all over the world, let's face it. And we had talked about wearing ugly Christmas sweaters for the podcast this week. And you wore, it's not really an ugly Christmas vest at all. I like it.
Yeah, well, I don't like to call it ugly. I like to call it tacky. And tacky is as tacky does.
Tacky's a good old Southern expression,
Yes, well, it adds to the spirit. And, sometimes tacky's okay.
Well, I searched my closet. I do not have an ugly Christmas sweater, so I wore a generic Christmas-colored sweater. I've got some pretty ugly Hawaiian shirts, and I promise to wear some of those on the future podcast.
I can't wait, yeah.
Will drive the cameras crazy, I'm sure. Christmas to me it goes back to rural Alabama, and I'm fortunate enough as a writer to have done 2 Christmas books. I'm just going to hold these up. I'm not trying to sell books here. I wrote these with a good friend named Edie Hand. Edie, and I hope she'll be a future guest on our podcast because her story is so inspiring too. She's actually Elvis Presley's first cousin.
Okay.
And she used to spend Christmas at Graceland with Elvis. And she went along with him in his Cadillac when he would go out and deliver bicycles and food to poor people around Memphis. And that was part of her job, was to help Elvis deliver those. But Edie and I wrote these 2 books. The first one, The Last Christmas Ride, and by the way, I wrote these under a pseudonym, Jeffrey Addison, because I primarily write about World War II and football and stock car racing and things like that. And these are just sweet little inspirational novellas. So I used a pseudonym. They've now been republished under my name as well. But
Your actual name?
yes.
Okay.
And I picked Jeffrey Addison because the A's get shelved at the top on the left-hand side. So they're the first ones you get to. I don't think that helped us at all. First book was The Last Christmas Ride is actually Edie's true story. She lost 3 brothers at very early ages, 2 of them in automobile accidents, and the third had brain cancer. And they knew he only had a few days left at Christmas. And she had promised him that if he would persevere, she would try to recreate a family tradition of theirs, which was to get on their horses, ride out into the woods and get a Christmas tree just before Christmas. And they did that as children. And she wanted to do that one more time with him. And she was able, she and her sister, to actually get that brother up on a horse and let him ride around on that last Christmas ride.
Wow.
It sounds like such a downer of a story, but it's actually a beautiful story and very, very compelling and inspirational. And we haven't been able to get the movie made on that one yet.
Well, it sounds like a no-brainer to put that into a movie.
Well, it's that negative ending that everybody worries about. He does pass away a few days after Christmas.
Sure. But I mean, it's a lot better than what some other things out there are. So sappy that there's no.
I agree. If you know a producer who's looking for, we've actually combined two of both these books into one script that's making the rounds. It's in various stages of rejection, even as we speak. The second book is called A Christmas Ride, The Miracle of the Lights, and it deals with something that is a reality. How many families break up? And how tough it is around Christmas time when there's divorce or just dissension within the family and people move away and they won't speak. And that happens in this book. But we let a very special Christmas miracle that involves lights on a mountain help bring that family back together again. And they realize how important family is at Christmas time. Again, I'm not trying to sell books, but those are available wherever books are sold.
Would you say that this has a happy ending?
This one has a definitely happy ending.
All right.
The fractured family gets back together again.
All right. Well, I think both of them sound very interesting. And
Good. Those are your copies, by the way.
Oh, are they? Wow. Okay. I'll try not to start reading it right now on the spot.
But you got to go to Amazon and give it a 5-star review, of course.
Yes, I will. Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Now, you've moved around most of your life. What are some of the Christmas memories of those times?
We've all. I mentioned the Belize Christmas, and the other one I wanted to talk about was when you enter into a new phase, and that's parenthood of children that have you're having Christmas with them for the first time, and you're seeing it through their eyes. In a different way. You have a little more context, you have a little more awareness of what's really going on, but then you're also, experiencing their delight and anticipation as a child. So we have 3 kids, my husband and I do, and our oldest is Laura, and, she's the oldest, so she's kind of like the spearhead point man on some of the
all older children are.
Right, yeah. So she was asked to be Mary in a preschool, nativity, and this was our first experience with her. And I actually created the costume and the little headpiece and everything with combs and all that to stick in her hair, and I actually came across her headpiece in a box today. So again, these things have been coming up in my life, and they're very tactile. The ceramic tree, finding her little headdress thing, and then it just takes you right back and makes you remember and recall those moments. So anyway, she was Mary, and she had a Joseph. It was probably 4 or 5 years old. Part of the preschool program at church, and they did their thing. And God bless all of those teachers. They are doing the Lord's work in what they do, because you won't see it. You're not going to see perfection. You're going to see a lot of chaos up on stage. But for them to even get those kids corralled up there and in any type of formation is in and of itself pretty much a major accomplishment. And of course, there was always the distractions. There were someone was not happy with his costume and started fiddling and moving it, and another person gets out of place and all that. I actually talked to Laura and asked her what she remembers of that moment, because, we're real excited for her. We're hoping this is going to be, a significant memory for her. And she was like, honestly, I don't remember much at all, except that Joseph kept putting his arm around me, and I was 5 years old, and I didn't want him to, and I was so incensed that he would do that in front of everybody. So that was all she remembers of the whole thing. The whole spiritual aspect of it, not so much, but it's still an important tradition, as hokey or imperfect as some people would like, allude to it maybe as being. It's so important to do for our kids, to engage them in the sensory activity of recognizing this moment or recognizing this celebration. And so I just think, we tend to, again, I come back to that whole commercialization and trying to perfect things, and we probably need to step away from that more and just say, hey, the more imperfect, the better, because it helps create a memory.
That's what we kept trying to remember as we watched our children go through those church reenactments and the little play and the little skit and the singing and all that. And we're sitting there with our lips moving along with their lines, hoping they remember them. And,
right.
And you hope they keep their cool when Joseph decides he doesn't want to be on the stage anymore and rips off his robe, his bathrobe, Dad's bathrobe or whatever. But you're right. That's the reality, and they end up enjoying it. I know our middle son, our middle child, a son, loved to sing, and he had solo parts in the choir when they did those. The one thing I do remember very strongly is my wife wanted to capture all of this, and she's seen our kids grow up through the lens of a camera, not in reality. And I keep saying, watch it, you'll remember it. But we had this little Super 8 movie camera, and it was too dark. You couldn't see what was going on. So she went out and bought this light bar that went with it with 2 huge bulbs on it. So we got all sorts of Christmas movies and Christmas pageants where everybody's going, turn it off, turn it off. But we still have that. We've transferred a lot of it over to digital, but I still enjoying saying, turn it off, turn it off.
So she was always in the back of the room, hunkered over
and at family gatherings, everybody's sitting around opening presents. Okay, oh, thank you very much. I can't tell what it is because I'm blinded, but I appreciate it.
That's
but
funny.
At least she captured those times. I think about we grew up. We weren't poor exactly, but we didn't have a lot of money. There's not much difference there. But growing up out in rural St. Clair County, the greatest Christmas thing for us is we always got together with my grandmother and grandfather and all of our cousins. And my dad always had to work on Christmas Eve, and he would take us and drop us off at 7 or 8 o'clock that morning on the way to work.
What did he do that you?
He was a television repairman, actually.
Oh, wow.
And delivery man and setup man and put up the antenna guy. So everybody was getting that Christmas TV. So he was always busy around that time.
I bet.
But we would spend the whole day playing outside with our cousins, playing war and whatever cousins play. And then at night, we would all gather in one big room in my grandmother's house. And they would keep all the kids in this one room. And we knew what was going on. Santa was showing up in the other room. And he was leaving candy and soda pop. We called them Coke. Any soda pop is a Coke where I grew up. And all the things that we weren't really able to have. People laugh. My kids laugh when I say, you know what, the only time we had soda or a Coke was around Christmas time when Santa brought it to us. And he would also bring fruit and nuts and all this other wonderful stuff that nobody touched, but lots of candy bars. And what had happened, of course, all the parents chipped in and went to the store and bought all this stuff that we never really had access to, but Santa left it there, and that was wonderful. And then our dad would come when he got off, and we would be going home, and he would always catch a glimpse of Santa. And he was like, I saw him. Did you see him? Did you guys see? I thought I heard jingle bells, too. No, where was he?
That's great.
And then we go home, and our eyes wouldn't close all night, but it was so exciting.
Yes, that's great. My grandparents used to put an orange at the bottom of the stocking, and for one, it's great filler. There's no doubt about it. And it's certainly better than like a lemon or something.
A coal.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. But I can't say that we really appreciated it as kids. We're just like, what? An orange? Until I was reading the Laura Ingalls Wilder series.
Mm-hmm.
I was revisiting it for some reason. I think our kids were reading it in school, so I like to read. So I was like, I'd like to revisit this. And they were out in the boonies as well. And obviously this was, pioneer times. And she talks about when she got an orange for the first time and how amazed she was. It was such a luxury to have fresh citrus fruit. And it's almost like, that's carried on, that people, we don't understand how accessible that is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't appreciate it as a luxury, even better and certainly more healthy than maybe a soda pop.
Yeah, a Coke or a candy bar or
right. But we gravitate to this other stuff. We don't realize how very good that stuff is and how other people did not have access to it, to where it was more of a luxury.
Yeah, the other thing, we knew not to ask for too much from Santa. Santa was just, Santa's got a lot of other children he's got to get stuff for this year, Don, so don't wish for stuff that you don't really need. So I was a big fan of the Singing Cowboy, and you don't know what that is. Nobody, not at my age.
Gene Autry, maybe?
Gene Autry.
Oh, it was, okay.
We only got 2 television stations out where I grew up. And even that picture would wave and be hard to see sometimes. And even if an airplane flew over, you'd lose the picture for a few minutes. But there were and people of my age will remember Benny Carl, Cousin Cliff, Sergeant Jack. These were the television personalities that would play cartoons and the serials with Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. Tex Ritter. Tex Ritter had a series of Westerns that played on television. He was one of my favorites, too, because he would ride on that horse, play that guitar, and sing, and that's kind of what I wanted to do.
Wow.
I wanted to be a cowboy.
Did you ever have a gun?
Well, I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
We every Christmas, my mother and dad knew what I wanted. I wanted 2 cap pistols, but I dare not ask for 2. So I'd ask for 1 cap pistol, a holster, and a roll of caps. The little caps that sounded like bullets.
I remember them well.
And of course, that's what I would get. I would get a cap pistol and a holster and a roll of caps. But my mother would also get me a pair of blue jeans and a shirt, and she would convince me that those were that's what Western guitar player and singers wore. They were actually school clothes, and a belt. The belt for the holster would be my school belt. I'm telling tales here, but you have to understand that at that time, most of the shirts, for example, that I wore to school were made from chicken feed sacks. In those days, chicken feed and cow feed, we didn't buy cow feed, we didn't buy pig feed. We bought some chicken feed, and we would get them from another family that raised chickens, but they had a print pattern on them. My mother would cut those up, and she would make our school clothes out of that.
They literally had shirt patterns on them, the sleeves and the torso, kind of a cutout thing?
It was just cloth, and you had to cut it out from a pattern and then sew it up and make a shirt out of it. But it did have just flowers or trees or stripes or whatever on it. That's, if you look at probably my 1st grade through my 6th grade school pictures, those are all chicken feed sacks that I'm wearing there.
That's amazing. I don't know who I was talking to about that exact same thing recently. And I was kind of wondering out loud, maybe this is true or not, I don't know, but you might be able to speak to it. Did they change up the patterns for the sake of everybody that's using them because they knew that people were using them?
Yep, they knew people were using them, and I don't know if it was just a little extra incentive to buy that particular brand of feed or whatever it was, but
hey, if it adds some color to your wardrobe.
Certainly did mine.
The chickens don't mind, right?
Chickens don't mind at all.
What feed
they're
you're doing.
They're still going to lay eggs, right?
Right. Yeah, that's amazing because the person I was talking to was talking about women making even dresses from the chicken feed sacks and everything. Talk about multi-purpose. I love it.
Yeah, of course, it was kind of cool. We moved to Nashville in the late 70s and lived there for several years. And our house was on one side of Franklin Road, and about 4 blocks the other side of Franklin Road was where Tex Ritter lived in Nashville. You know, John Ritter, his son, which was an actor, he grew up in that house.
Yes. Oh, wow. All right. So tell me a little bit more about the singing cowboy. Did he ever get a gun? Or he stuck with his guitar?
Yes. Well, of course, they had to have a gun because they had to ride along and shoot.
Okay.
It was cool. We had one guy, Sterling Brewer, which people from Alabama remember Sterling. He also did the wrestling announcements when they would have Friday night wrestling on television here, live wrestling. Crazy stuff. But Sterling also had an advertising agency and was a television personality. But he had one of those shows where he would play cartoons and play Western serials, and he would pop a balloon, and the cartoon would start. And that was he called his show the Balloon Goon Show.
Oh, wow.
And this was my first touch of fame. He would show pictures that that kids had drawn and sent into the show. So I drew a picture of an airplane, which was terrible, and he held it up. I was watching one day. I had no idea. Yeah, this is from little Don Keith out in Springville, a great, great artist, Don Keith. Thank you for sending that in. That was my 5 seconds of fame.
Yeah.
But many years later, I met Sterling. This was actually only a couple of years ago. He's passed away since then, but I met him at an event, and I told him that story about sending in the picture. He said, "Oh, yeah, I still got it on my refrigerator." He probably tells that to everybody, right?
Wow. A consummate entertainer there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. That's funny. That's great.
Tell us more about your growing up and Christmas. Your experience is totally different from mine, obviously.
Yeah.
I was not a missionary.
Right. When there was another Christmas I remember in Paraguay when I was younger. I remember going to my grandparents' house in West Virginia. That's where both my parents are from. And, they would have some of the Christmas stuff from the 50s. Remember those old tinsel-y type trees where you just stick in, they just had these straight
I probably
branches.
Still have one in my basement somewhere.
And they were silver. She had a silver one. And I mean, it almost looks space-agey in its tackiness. And I remember her having that tree, and she never deviated from it, ever.
Did she have the rotating lights that would shine on it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love those. I thought that was great. But anyways, when we were in Paraguay, we started looking around for some trees, and we had graduated from there we've done live trees and a little more realistic looking trees. Well, when we got to Paraguay, we found out that they were still stuck in the 50s too. And we were pulling these strange cosmic looking trees with strange bent branches and everything. And again, that was just another stripped down Christmas where we set it on the table and had, that was the extent of it, And I say all that now because now it seems like we put a lot of money and time and effort into our decorations, and it's all good. It's all great in capturing the spirit and ushering in the spirit, but sometimes when you just get it down to the bare minimum, it helps you.
I'm absolutely for the bare minimum. Okay.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're the one who has to get it up from the attic.
I'm the one that has
down.
to get it out of the attic. I got to get it out of the basement. I got to get it out of the storage room.
Right.
And we've been going through that lately at my house anyway. I keep thinking about kids and Christmas and the magic of Christmas, and I hope we're doing a good job of making sure our kids know it's not all Santa Claus and gifts and that sort of thing. But I remember all those nights, Christmas Eves, putting those toys together.
Oh, yeah.
For Santa.
Yeah.
Santa was going to bring them, but I had to put them together for Santa. He doesn't have time to do all that.
Yeah, well, you're subcontracting.
Exactly.
Right? You're a contracted elf.
And we went through that Star Wars phase. And those things, like a million pieces, you got to get the at and all those different characters and things done. And every one of them had like a million little decals you had to put on in the right place. And I finally convinced my kids that Santa wanted to allow them to put those decals where they wanted them rather than him having to do that. But I think of those nights doing that up until midnight or so. And in the background, I always had the television on, and they were always playing the Christmas Eve Mass from Vatican City.
Oh, okay.
And now I still turn that on because it brings back those memories of listening to that. Of course, the kids would get up at 1 or 1:30 before I'd even go to sleep because they figured Santa had been there by then.
And what would the Christmas Eve Mass consist of? A lot of singing?
Yep, a lot of singing, and someone would say Mass, and it was always in the other room in the background, but it just reminded me so much of, I knew how excited the kids were going to be when they got up, and that's just one of those happy memories. So now sometimes I still turn on that Christmas Eve Mass from Vatican City.
Wow, I honestly didn't even know that was out there. But
when you moved to Alabama, did you notice anything different in our traditions here, or what was it like? You've moved around quite a bit, so you get used to wherever you are and whatever happens.
I didn't see any major difference in how people engaged in the season per se, as far as decorating or having a Christmas spirit. But there was a big difference in this one little item called the white stuff. Snow. Oh my goodness. Yeah, well, we had come from north of Pittsburgh, and and even before that, we lived in Buffalo. So the day that we moved out of Buffalo, we had to deal with 5 feet of snow. So, and in fact, we couldn't move that day because all the moving trucks were snowed in. So we're kind of familiar with it. Not that we like it, but we're familiar with it. So when we came down here in 2013, those of you who lived through Snowmageddon 2014 know where I'm headed. We came in August of 2013, dripping in sweat. And then we ended it into the Christmas season, and everything was normal. Everything was fine until there was a brushing of snow. And then, everything stopped. That first time, I believe it happened in enough time where everybody could see, all right, we're not going to even send our kids to school. So they were canceled, and I was like, okay, well, that is very interesting because there's not even an inch on the ground. That's very interesting because we would normally have to hit 2 feet or more before things would get canceled. So then rolls around January 2014, and Snowmageddon hits, and it hits in the middle of the day. And I knew that there was going to be a little more panic involved just based off of what had happened in December. So I went to get my daughter from school, and I thought, it's only less than 4 miles down the road. So Don, I'm thinking, okay, let me just double. All right, I'll triple the time. It takes me 5 minutes. I'll be back in an hour. No, 4 hours later, I think we actually limped into the room, we got home. That was an amazing thing. My husband had 4-wheel drive, and he was able to go out and help some people get out of ditches and things. He even took some people home that were trying to walk home it would not have been good for them to continue. They were not in a good spot to do that. They were elderly. So he got them home, and we were just discussing it afterwards, and we actually went out the day after Snowmageddon just to look at the pile up of cars that were on 280. Some of them even had their doors still open. And we were just, even the other day, my husband was mentioning, he was like, I think about that. I'm like, what kind of panic is someone in that they walk away from their car and leave the door open? It's just a different mentality where we're not quite sure what to make of it. But one thing's for sure, despite the panic that snow caused, the other side of it was we got to see people really, really show an amazing amount of kindness, helpfulness, just taking care of strangers, utter strangers. People slept in other people's homes. They had no clue who they were, or businesses or churches. I mean, everybody pitched in. And that's when we realized, okay, yeah, some Alabamians have this love-hate relationship with snow. It terrorizes them, but they also delight in it if it times out right. If it comes when you're at home, it's great. But if it happens on the roads, all heck breaks loose and they run around with their hair on fire. But at the same time, they don't lose their sense of humanity and helping each other. And that became very, very clear.
Absolutely. Even those guys in the 4-wheel drives, though, typically don't know how to drive in snow around this part of the country. So
no.
They end up in the ditch, too. But at least they're out there trying to help.
Right. And in all fairness, I do realize that, people up north, there's a culture there. You have the equipment, you have the ice, the salt, the chains on your tires, the snow plows and all of that. So, and this was, in all fairness, this was out of the blue. And once you're dealing with ice, all bets are off.
Yeah. And our hills and mountains kind of contribute to that as well.
Right. But yeah, in all of that, we never heard or saw people, being too crazy or not, selfishly considering only themselves. It was a group effort during that whole time for people to get people to safety, get them food, make sure they're all right. And so it really opened our eyes when we were here that, Birmingham is a special place. People are very, very generous, kind. It's a great community to be in. And
I think that's a good observation, too. And I think we're in the Christmas spirit most of the year, don't you?
Yeah, you're probably right.
At least I hope so.
I think so.
We'd still like to have a white Christmas. We want 4 inches of snow on Christmas, and then it all melts the next day, and everybody goes about their business just like normal.
Yes, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Well, we don't, again, know when you're actually listening to or watching this podcast, but we will wish you the best of the holiday season. Best of Christmas, Merry Christmas, a blessed Christmas, and of course a Happy New Year. We can say that all year long, I guess.
That's right.
Hope you have a happy year. I appreciate you telling us about some of your experiences and me talking about all the stuff I just made up. I do write fiction,
That's right.
No, all this stuff really happened, and it's very fond memories. Some of them weren't necessarily that. At least I got that cap pistol and a roll of caps and my Tex Ritter outfit. Never got a hat, though. I don't know what happened to my hat, because every good singing cowboy's got to have a hat and a horse.
That's right. Well, maybe this is the year, Don.
This may be the year. We had mules. We never had horses, but at least in my mind, I'd sit out on the wood pile and sing Tex Ritter songs. And it was a Merry Christmas for me, and I hope it is for you as well. This Alabama Life. Be sure to join us for the next podcast or telepodcast. You can download them on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also see the video versions of this on YouTube. And if we're not there yet, we will be shortly on the 1819news.com site. Be sure to go ahead and put that among your favorites on your favorite browser, so you can check and see not only on this podcast, but a lot of other very exciting and interesting things, including the news every day with you, by the way. You want to plug your newscast?
Sure, yeah. The Daily Detail put out by 1819 News. You can find that on Spotify or iTunes, and you can subscribe so it hits your phone every day if you want to get a 5 to 10 not 5 minute. We're more closer to 10 to 12 minute update on some of the stories, the happenings in Alabama, state events that are happening, as well as some national news, just to kind of get you up to speed at the best time for you, when you're doing your teeth, when you're driving in the car, when you're getting dressed, whatever. You don't have to necessarily wait for a certain newscast at a certain time. You can just listen to it and you're on your way, knowing a little bit more about what's happening around you.
And what I love about it, something I'm always asking for, is it's the news. It's not somebody's version of the news. It's the facts. It's what's happening, and then you make up your own mind about what you believe about what's going on.
That's our goal for sure. Yeah,
and it's great. I appreciate it very much. Andrea, thank you. Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year.
Likewise.
And we'll see you next time on This Alabama Life.